Good evening. There are seats up here if you guys want to sit down. You don't have to stand at the back if you don't want to. There's extra seats up here if you want to sit in the front here or the second row. Welcome to tonight's Planning Commission meeting. The city has returned to hybrid public meetings pursuant to AB 361, which allows for a deviation from the teleconference rules required by the Ralph M. Brown Act. Residents now have the option to attend the meeting in person or to participate remotely. To participate remotely, residents can live stream the meeting at prcity.com/YouTube and or call 805-865-7276 to provide public comment via the phone. The phone line will be open just prior to the start of the meeting and will remain open throughout the meeting to ensure the opportunity for the public to comment on each item heard by the commission. Written public comments can be submitted via email to planning@prcity.com. Those received prior to 12 noon on the day of the meeting will be posted to the city's website as an addendum to the agenda. If submitting written comments in advance of the meeting, please note the agenda item by number or name. Planning Commission meetings will be live streamed during the meeting and available to play later on the YouTube by accessing the following link, prcity.com/YouTube. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and let's have the Pledge of Allegiance here once we get the lights back on. There we go. Wonderful. All right. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Marlowe? Present. Commissioner Connolly?
Here.
Commissioner Kogler?
Here.
Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Neal? Commissioner Covarrubias? Chairperson Christensen?
Here.
Record will reflect that Neal and Covarrubias are absent. We were notified that they both weren't going to make it tonight.
Thank you. Staff introductions, please.
Marcy Reynoso and Ashley Peterson, Administrative Assistants.
Warren Frace, Community Development Director.
Darren Nash, City Planner.
Denise Hansen with the City Attorney's Office on behalf of staff.
Paul Sloan, Economic Development Manager.
Hi, Amy Brandon from the City Attorney's Office, also here.
David Athy, City Engineer.
Great, thank you. All right, now we'd like to take any general public comments regarding matters not on the agenda tonight. Are there any out there? Hearing none?
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead and introduce yourself and your address, and please give us your comment.
My name is Michael Martin. I grew up here, born and raised in North County, but this place is turning into little LA.
What's your address, sir? I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
Do you need my address?
It's not necessary.
No? Okay, thank you.
Okay. So yeah, no, this place is turning into LA. So that's all I have to say for that.
All right, well, thank you very much. Any other comments not on the agenda tonight? All right. Hearing none, we're going to move on to the agenda items proposed for tonight. And before we take the staff report, Commissioner Kogler would like to make a brief comment about this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just need to report an ex parte conversation which happened spontaneously. I was on the site the other day, just at the corner of the site actually, looking at the property, and I was approached by the owner who initiated some conversation with me. I just want to state for the record that there were no opinions that I offered in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, I hadn't even reviewed the staff report at that time. It did so subsequent to that conversation. So I just wanted to make that of record.
Okay, thank you. And I think I skipped an item there. Any agenda items to be proposed or tabled for later?
There are none.
Thank you. Moving on, I think we'd like to move on to the first item on the agenda tonight. And staff have a report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. This item before you tonight is the Central Coast Smog and Auto Repair item. Tonight, we're looking at compliance with the review of conditional use permit 87006. The property is located at 639 Creston Road. That's the corner of Creston Road and Walnut Drive. This conditional use permit was approved for the site back in 1987. It was approved for a minor auto repair parts installation, ended up becoming a car radio, stereo installation store for many years. The use permit has a series of conditions, one of them being that the conditional use permit allows for minor auto repair and parts. The use permit goes with the land, or it's the ability to use the use permit for the building and the site can change from owners as long as the conditions of approval can be complied with. So back in January of 2011, this was the site that we were speaking of, the old converted gas station, which was two-bay, minor auto repair, stereo repair at the time. You can see the existing pavement, the building, the green area in the back, the dirt area in the back, there on the corner. The zoning is a C2 zone, so in commercial zones, auto repair is permitted with the approval of a conditional use permit, and that's what's indicated by the yellow circle on top. That column is saying that a conditional use permit is required in the C2 zone for auto repair. Uses that aren't permitted as a use is vehicle storage. So vehicle storage lots in the C2 zone are not permitted. So in August of 2016, Central Coast Smog and Auto business began. In September of that year, the city started receiving complaints of this use, excessive number of vehicles, noise from working outside, glare from floodlights were some of the complaints at the time. September 2016 through November 2017, code enforcement activity was happening at that time into 2018, where this item came up to the Planning Commission for review. So back in 2018, February, then May of 2018, there were two public hearings with the Planning Commission to review this use permit. The owner was given time to bring the use into compliance, and the Planning Commission determined the business to be in compliance with CUP 87006. Being in compliance with the use permit takes it back to being in compliance with the conditions of approval you see on the right, and also the site plan that you see on the left. So late in 2020, the city began receiving additional complaints, excessive number of vehicles parked outside, unpermitted grading on the site behind the buildings, vehicles and trailers parked off-site, repair work occurring in the parking lot. Then in March 2021, the city building department issued a stop work order issued for illegal grading. In May 21 and then March of 2023, work with the owner to abate the grading violations to comply with CUP 87006. And in August 2023, stop work order issued for the fence construction. So the fencing was created as an unpermitted outdoor storage use. In September 2023, non-compliance letter for CUP for the conditional use permit to be revisited by the Planning Commission. So this is photos of the area behind the fencing, the storage of vehicles. The vehicle storage component of this business is not permitted. So that is one thing that the Planning Commission needs to understand and review is the outdoor storage, the vehicle storage is not a permitted use in the C2 zone. This site, if you look at the aerial here, so the 1987 conditional use permit allowed the use of the buildings. It had conditions for the work to be done inside the building, not out in the parking lot. And it had the site plan that really used the area around the building. We do understand that auto repair, commercial uses at times have accessory outdoor storage, equipment, parts, that kind of thing. In this case, as an accessory use, the possibility of having some storage outside the building, in the back, that kind of thing. But what is not allowed and what the use permit from 1907 does not allow and what the site plan approved with the use permit is going back into this area, grading this area and using it for storage of vehicle and equipment. And that is why when the fence was erected, that was also an issue, is the fencing not being part of that original site plan and conditional use permit. If this was a use permit coming to the Planning Commission for outdoor storage, we'd be looking at quite large setbacks, landscaping. We'd be reviewing the materials of fencing. We'd be reviewing the height. We'd be reviewing where it's located and just in general how that component fit in with the surrounding area. A conditional use permit, the whole reason it comes to the Planning Commission is for the Planning Commission to make findings of compatibility, add conditions of approval to a use so that it can be compatible with surrounding uses. So based on complaints that the city has had, based on visuals of the business spilling out into the streets, out into neighboring properties, it's obvious that it's beyond the site planning and the use permit of the 87 use permit. So this was the site prior to the smog business coming on. And then you can see as a series of photos, this is 2014, and then this is 2017 after the smog business came in. And you can start to see the number of vehicles, the expansion beyond the site plan that was approved. Then this gets into the grading of the slope and behind the building. You can see here, you can see kind of a road cut up and then grading done up on top off of site. Tractors working, grading. So again, the site plan that was approved with the use permit is basically the rectangular white box area. And that was what the use permit of 1987 required that minor auto repair business to keep its business within, is that site planning area. So it's just a picture showing what it was prior and then what's going on today. So there are a series of options for the Planning Commission. Option one is to direct the owner to restore the site back to the existing regulating site plan and removing all fencing. So that's taking it back to that 1987 site plan and conditions. Option two would be determine the use is likely not in compliance with the use permit and direct staff to agendize the CUP for a future Planning Commission meeting to consider revocation of the use permit. Option three is to direct staff to work with the applicant to submit an application to amend the use permit from 1987 to ensure neighborhood compatibility and compliance with the city design standards as directed by the commission. And 4 would be to provide alternative direction to staff. Through correspondence, through conversations with the owner, staff has indicated that in order to expand beyond the 1987 site plan, it would take an amendment to the conditional use permit coming back to the Planning Commission to, for instance, expand into the dirt area along Walnut Drive, to work outside of the bays. All those kind of things can be considered, but only after the Planning Commission reviews the use permit and an amendment to the use permit and determines whether that's going to be compatible or not. And that process of coming back to the Planning Commission is what would need to happen for an amendment to allow those kind of things. So when we look at the, basically the use around the building, and then we look at expansion beyond, the applicant would need to provide us plans explaining what it is they wanted to do prior to doing it so that we could be reviewed for compliance with the zoning code, so it can be reviewed with the engineering department, building department, to make sure that everyone understands that we need permits for doing certain things, and then coming to an amendment hearing to determine if it would be compatible. So staff's recommendation is option 1, would be to direct the owner to restore the site back to the existing regulating plan, that 1987 conditional use permit, remove the fence, remove the vehicles being stored in the dirt area, limit vehicles being parked on the property to the CUP site plan, or the retaining wall and the slope landscaping to be installed immediately. This option would be most likely to ensure neighborhood compatibility with the surrounding residential neighbors by limiting the size and intensity of the auto repair use. Option 2 would be to determine the use is not in compliance with the conditional use permit 87-006 and come back to a future Planning Commission meeting to consider revocation. Direct staff and the city attorney to agendize a public hearing to revoke the use permit. Revocation will extinguish all auto repair uses on the site. The Planning Commission should consider that revocation of the use permit would require the business to cease operations at this location. The site would no longer be usable for auto repair by any other tenant. Then option 3 would be to direct staff to work with the applicant to submit an application to amend the 87 use permit. This would be to submit the planning application, new site planning. It would go through review of the Development Review Committee to ensure consistency with design standards, compatibility, and then the outdoor vehicle storage lots are prohibited. So we really need to focus on that auto repair use, and if there was the request to have outdoor storage, it really would need to be an accessory to that auto repair business, where as it's currently developed on site appears to be beyond that. So again, option 1, staff's recommendation would be to bring it back to what the use permit approves. Staff is on board with working with the applicant to bring it into conformance so that the business can continue. It is a small site on a corner with residential in close proximity, so expanding too far beyond what's there now, it could be a concern, but we'd be open to working with the applicant on an amendment project as well. There are some options before the Planning Commission, so we'd be happy to discuss those options with you. That ends my report.
Great, thank you, Darren. Would the applicant like to have a presentation of their own? Make some comments? Is the applicant here tonight?
Yes,
Thank you. Go ahead and make your presentation, sir. Just announce who you are.
So I'm Christian Mercado. So I own and operate Central Coast Smog. The vehicle storage, I'm still a little unclear of the storage time, I guess I could say. So I am having, after COVID happened, receiving parts has been a little bit harder. So vehicles do stay 3-4 days until parts come in. So that's what I was trying to make the front end look good. So I was pushing the cars that had to stay towards the back until parts showed up. The grading part, I did obtain a permit. I don't know if that was up there or not. But the fencing, I personally, I like the fence. I see where people can complain, or the storage part of it. That's pretty much it, what I have about the storage. Just after COVID it's still pretty hard to get parts in.
Okay. Okay. If you'll hang around, we may have questions. And we're going to have questions for staff now. The commissioners will be, if you have any questions for staff, now's the time to ask. We'll start with Commissioner Marlowe.
So the staff recommendation is to work with the applicant, but it seems that this has been a challenge. And what are the ability of the city to ensure that the applicant follows these requirements? And then as far as like the applicant was saying, with vehicles being stored there, I worked at an auto shop in high school on a corner, and I get it. I find it difficult not to work on them in the parking lot, so to speak. But when does it go from storage or just long-term repairs to storage, right? Like you got a vehicle there, sometimes people don't have money. It could sit there for 2-3 weeks before they get money to get paid. So when is that line? Where does the line get drawn for something like that? When is it considered storage versus just waiting for some stuff or someone to pay?
I don't know the business and what the type of work that's being done there, but the conditional use permit is specific for minor repairs, minor oil changes, those kind of things. Typically that minor auto repair doesn't require the long wait for parts, the heavy duty vehicles, the vehicles that are apart that are obviously beyond minor.
Sure.
So I think if we look back to what the conditional use permit allowed and allows, that's what we're trying to, and what we've been trying to do is work with Mr. Mercado to bring that business back to a level and intensity that more complies with that minor auto repair and that site plan.
So it's more of like a smog and oil change place first and not a major repair second. They shouldn't be doing long-term projects there.
The conditions say minor auto repair. So
what's
I
the
think
definition
I
of
think
that?
we can, Mr. Mercado, I'm sure can tell us a lot of things can be minor. So I understand that. So it comes down to the auto repair. Then we get to the conditions about the work needing to be done inside. So it just seems like the amount of vehicles that stay, the storage is beyond a minor 2-bay auto repair shop, and has kind of exceeded what that shop can do per that existing use permit and site plan.
I understand. And so let's say we work with we approve option one, the applicant continue doing their business. Like, how often would the city go by there and ensure that they're not, they're not loading up with people? They're not, because working in a shop like that, it's very difficult not to, you don't always pull a car in the shop when you want to look under the hood at the belt or whatever's going on with it. You take it for a test drive. You're not going to pull it in and pull it out every time. So how often would the city go by if we did that? And what would be if they did violate the terms of the condition, what would be the plan for that?
Well, that's not something we really have time to do with all the other projects that we're working on bringing you. Code enforcement and sitting to count cars and what's being done is not something that we tend to do. We don't go looking for things, we act on complaints. So I think the question is, how long would it take before neighbors complain that they're working beyond their use permit or conditions again? Because the last time it came to the planning commission, up into the planning commission, there was a lot of things happening out there to clean it up, to remove cars, to make it look like the pictures we saw prior to. And it got to the point where the planning commission and staff said, yeah, it complies. The number of cars don't exceed the parking spaces. They're not working beyond the bays. And we were able to report to the planning commission that they were complying with their use permit.
Sure.
But as the photos show, the action of the planning commission, I believe it was back in 2018, was to allow to continue, not to revoke the use permit because it was consistent. So wasn't long before it seemed like the business started to expand beyond those conditions again.
Understood. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Conley.
Yeah, I have a few questions for staff. I presume the lot behind this is owned by the same owner, and that's why they're using that as overflow. Is that correct? Where the grading's taking place? That'd be that area.
So you can see the yellow,
Okay.
is proximity of where the property lines are.
Okay, I thought maybe it went further to the north into that other vacant property.
No, up here is, I believe, the county owned.
So I assume before they built the fence, they didn't talk to the city. There's no permitting action for the fence.
My understanding is that the question was asked called up on the phone, asked if we need a permit for a fence. Typically, you don't need a permit for a fence. It's not a structural kind of thing. However,
are there any standards for a fence? The city has standards?
Yes, there's standards for a fence. There's requirements for setbacks, height, materials. But I think the main thing to understand is that the fence is creating a use, the outdoor storage use, and that's what's not complying with the use permit. So you don't need a permit to build a fence, but this site with this use permit and these uses need to comply with the conditions and the site plan that was approved for.
And regarding option one, you mentioned that the retaining wall, that the project would involve removing the fence, installing the retaining wall, and slope landscaping. Would those be required to be submitted to the city as far as plans and approved by the city, or maybe brought to the planning commission to look at the landscaping and I'm sure the retaining wall, if it's over a certain height, has to be engineered? Is all that going to take place through the city?
So as part of one of the stop work orders and addressing, the grading, was the engineering department working with Mr. Marcato. They did submit a grading plan. They did get a permit to bring the grading into compliance. It also required a retaining wall. The retaining wall hasn't been built and the grading has not been signed off. So part of that engineering permit for grading and retaining wall needs to be complied with. That's happening through the engineering department. The wall and the landscaping wouldn't come to the planning commission. That's happening with the engineering department, but that's something that needs to be complied with and inspected and completed.
And then finally, my last question with regard to option one is, how is that option different than the options that were brought before the planning commission in the past, dating back to 2018? This has been reviewed by the planning commission and various recommendations were provided. Presumably resolutions were passed. How is this option one different than that? And if it isn't any different, how do we know that things will be any different?
So these are pretty similar to the options that would have been before the Planning Commission back in 2018, with the first option being bring it back, scale it back, and bring it into compliance with the current conditions and site plan. And there's always the option to apply for an amendment. There was the option for the Planning Commission to revoke the use permit. But at that time, they chose the option, what was similar to option one here, to continue, allow the business to continue based on it complying with that use permitted conditions.
And so how do we know that passing a similar resolution today would have any different results in the future since it didn't have results in the past?
Well, I'm hoping that the applicant is listening to the Planning Commission and staff and his options, because we've done this before. The Planning Commission has heard this before, and we're back to kind of how it was before. So I think the city is making numerous efforts to provide options that allow the business to be continued, but it needs to continue in a manner that's approved by the Planning Commission. So either that's the current plan, or we come back with another plan and we present it to the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Davis. Yes, there will be an opportunity after we ask the questions of staff and the applicant, then we'll have room for public comment.
Darren, correct me if I'm wrong. I was on the Planning Commission when we first heard this and first voted on the conditional use permit. I recollect how we felt about no more than the 7 in the parking spaces and not doing business outside of the structure, not doing car work outside. I remember some concern about circulation, parking on Walnut. I remember some of the issues. I also remember being in the DRC meeting where we gave a 60-day timeline to come into compliance back in 2018. So I kind of, have we continued to give that notification? And has it been from staff? Has it been from attorneys? It appears like the attorneys have been in the process as well.
Yeah, and I defer to the city attorney who's been working on this. I know that there's been some timelines to bring it into compliance. I think that with the Planning Commission's option of taking option 1, I think there should probably be some timeline involved with that of when it needs to be complied by. Because I think that may have been what you're thinking of.
Yeah, and then maybe before we hear from the city attorney, probably will tonight. I saw in the staff report, in excess of $11,000 of staff time, just trying to help the applicant come up to compliance in good, with good intentions. So I guess my next question to staff would be, what I recollect, let me see, how do I say this? This business owner kind of inherited the conditional use permit, so to speak, that the conditions of the conditional use permit is specific to their new business, but they kind of inherited that. Is that correct?
Correct. The previous owner went through the use permit process for their.
And this is similar because of the location of where the business is located. The conditions put on them similar, 7 parking spaces, that kind of thing.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
What was it similar to Red Tunes, the previous owner? I think it was similar.
What's similar?
The conditions of
it is
use.
The same conditions.
They're the, so they are the, permit, okay, thank you. They're the exact same conditions.
Correct. This is what you're seeing from 1987 was the conditions of approval for the establishment.
And he is the applicant. He is the landowner now. I know you're
Correct.
The applicant, the landowner. Okay, I just wanted to verify that. Procedural question, if pursued option 2, and this might be the city attorney's answer to that. I'm all about business success. Would that mean termination of the business now or later after the Planning Commission had voted on revocation or not. Trying to understand what that would do. I would like to give the business owner, regardless of which option, an opportunity to fix it and fix it soon. Would option 2 give them time to bring it up?
So this is saying option 2, that the planning commission would consider the revocation of the use permit would require the business to cease operations at this location. The site would no longer be usable for auto repair by any other tenant. So if this were going to come forward to a future planning commission, that resolution would probably have some timelines associated with it too.
Okay. I'm trying to understand process, I guess, more than anything, of timelines. We want to keep this business in business, but we want also to bring it into compliance.
If the planning commission wanted to choose option 2, then that would be setting a future hearing to come back to the planning commission.
But the business would be allowed to operate until the final decision after that hearing, correct?
Correct. So can the applicant step aside so we can, thank you, sir.
Sure. So if the planning commission today chose option 2, a future date would be set for a revocation hearing. In the meantime, the business would be able to continue to operate. They may be in violation of the code. City could choose to issue some kind of enforcement if they chose to, but the action would not actually be taking effect until we came back for a revocation hearing and the planning commission made a decision.
And they could bring things up to compliance by then too.
They could, yes.
Okay, that's kind of what I was trying to understand, the process and the different options. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Kogler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few questions. So, Darren, this has been a gas station and it's passed, given the canopy over the front of the building. So it's fair to say that for quite some time, there's been some kind of auto-oriented use on that corner. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So dating back to 1987 and then more recently, a lot of back and forth for 5 years, 7 years, put different timelines on it depending on when you start and stop that. In that time frame, has anybody ever said maybe we should just start over with a new conditional use permit?
I'm not sure. Staff wouldn't have the ability to say that without coming to the planning commission for this process. So
Okay.
I'm not sure your question.
And the applicant has never stated, maybe I should just get a new permit that reflects what I want to do in the 2000s instead of something that dates back to 1987?
Well, I think as I mentioned, the part of the options are to come back with an amendment, and I think that option was discussed with the planning commission back in 2018.
Okay, all right, thank you. I think Commissioner Marlowe asked the question, do we have a definition for minor auto repair in the ordinance?
No, but if you take a look at the use permit condition, it talks about oil changes, minor repairs. So I don't believe we have that.
Okay, so there's no specific language. Could you tell us a little bit more? I'm truthfully a bit confused about the grading, the retaining wall, where that occurred. Did that grading work create this back dirt lot, so to speak, where cars are sitting? Am I seeing slope there that was supposed to have a retaining wall? Enlighten us a little bit about what that aspect of this project was that the engineering department was undertaking.
So this was a photo prior to the grading. There's a flat area, kind of this area here, that is part of, it's part of the ownership of the lot, but not part of what's approved with the conditional use. And there was discussion with the Planning Commission back in 2018 about his request, Mr. Mercado's request to use this, where it was indicated that it would require coming back to the Planning Commission for an amendment to use this area for parking. The grading, you can see there's kind of, I believe this was a wood retaining wall at the time, but there was a little retaining wall here. So this slope goes back, heads up to the north and plateaus. So this is the area that the grading occurred. So when you get to, you can start to see kind of a road up the hill, and then some grading activity, and then some grading activity up here off the site. And then this may have been after the grading permit was issued. Because you can see it's some more work in here where they're working on that. But so that's the grading part of it and the location of the grading.
And the yellow line is the property line that the business owner has, correct? There, you showed this road that was kind of going up the hill, and I think you referenced that as a county property or something in your presentation?
Correct.
Yeah, what is that? That has no relationship to this business, correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then let me understand, you put a chart up, Darren, early in your presentation that storage facilities are not permitted in this zone, and that would mean they're not permitted even by conditional use permit, correct?
Correct. As a use,
right.
The vehicle storage is not permitted.
Yeah,
I think that, we can talk about what can be accessory to a business. With the business, the indoor business, the business within a building would be the primary use.
And then one last request, if you could go to the 2018 photo that you showed as part of your presentation. It was just an observation, I guess, as I was looking through this. So if you look at that photo, that business operation at that time was very close to compliance because the site plan had 12 parking spaces on it. And the 1987, I assume, enabled somebody to have up to 12 vehicles. And it's, it's not exactly, it's pretty close there, ignoring what's happening in the dirt area, but that's fairly defined per the permit. Is that roughly correct?
There was some parking spaces painted out into the sidewalk that wasn't compliant. So this side of it really wasn't compliant. The parking in the dirt area is not compliant. But the parking along here is pretty close to what that site plan showed.
Okay. My only observation was that obviously the dirt, excluding the dirt lot, the intensity of the use was pretty close at that time to what the original permit was. I don't know what was happening with any outside work or anything at that time, but it just from a use standpoint, what fits on the site?
2018 was about the time it came to Planning Commission, so there was some work done to bring it back for that process.
Okay.
So this could have been a time when they came back to get it cleaned up for that 2018 use permit year.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Kogler. I have a couple questions for staff. Clarification, I think you already said this. The permit for the retaining wall has not been pulled by the applicant.
It's been issued by the city, so the grading is occurring. It occurred under a permit, but it hasn't been completed.
The grading or both the retaining wall and the grading?
There's a permit issued, but the retaining wall grading has not been completed.
Was part of the same permit.
And signed off by the, correct.
Okay, thank you.
By the city engineer.
And so then there would be fees owed on that as well. Okay. Is there more than one business license there now? This is a question for the applicant. Just one business license?
Yeah.
Okay. And Darren, when they did the original CUP, when Mr. Roga did the original CUP, that map, that was presented by him at the time, that would have been a requirement for the space that he wanted to have approved?
Correct. This was the applicant's site plan that was submitted back in 1987.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I had another question. Okay. 1 second and I'll, go ahead and ask your question, Commissioner Davis.
Just real quick, Darren, do we know what kind of work activity has gone on outside of the building?
I do not.
But there has been neighborhood complaints or we will hear maybe in the public hearing.
Obviously, there's vehicles stored.
Right.
Whether they're being worked on or what stage.
In the parking lot or what stage. Okay, that's all.
It's possible that the city attorney and our other planner working on it know more than that, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't think I have any other questions right now. So if we want to move on to public comment, we can do that at this time. All right. So for public comment, If someone would like to give public comment, we'd like you to please come to the podium. You'll have, I believe, Marcy, it's 3 minutes. And please state your name and feel free to step up, create a line behind, and give us your comments, please. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Francisco Ramirez. I'm a longtime resident here in Paso Robles. I know this young man since he was yay yonder. I took care of him when I was working with community health centers as a medical assistant. He is a longtime resident of Paso Robles. And I think we need to show some support, like the commissioner said, help him maintain the business going and allow him and tell him what needs to be fixed so that he can be fixed it. I heard some mention from staff that there was residents on both sides of the business. My recollection, since I've been here in Paso Robles, there's businesses right next to the building, a barber shop and some stores and laundromat. Behind it was the health department, so that's also commercial there. And then on the other side, there's a gas station, so that's another commercial. So it's not businesses on both sides. There are 3 sides that have businesses that are being used since I remember going up and down Creston Road. So just reminder of that, because I heard there was, residents on both sides. There's residents all over, but there's businesses on all 3 sides of this corner. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ron Williams, and I'm a 20-year resident and homeowner here in Paso Robles and drive this area of Creston Road daily. I currently work for Beta USA down on Paso Robles Street, and we're building a large facility out near Cava. So I'd like to note that I've been driving past this area for 20 plus years. And in my view, there's been long-term storage there for 20 years. We've seen RVs, boats, various things being repaired there for 2-3 days. It's never bothered me at all. And frankly, I think the way the building looks now with the fence looks a million times better. And I believe there was a dirt slope behind the building this whole time, and now there's a dirt slope there now. And I get the whole permits and planning and all of that, and I see what's going on in this city. We contribute a lot of money every year in property taxes. Our property taxes are huge. I won't go into the things that I would like to see our property taxes going for other than pinpointing someone like this guy trying to make a living here. And I'd like to go on record saying I fully support his business being here. I think it's improved the appearance of it. Mr. Marlowe commented on someone, what if someone had their car there and extended repairs needed to be done where it would take a week to a week and a half? Well, if it needed to be there, that's helping the car owner. It's helping someone in this community. And I know that we have huge hotels going in and all of this, and there's a lot of money. But if you look at the community as a whole, there's a lot of lower income people that live in this community that don't have money to take their car to the dealer, that they need a alternative place to take their car to have some repairs made. So if their engine blows up or they have some knock and they determine there's some repair that needs to be made and it takes a week and their car's there, it's not going to bother me a bit. So I'd just like to say that I support this business being there, and I hope that this Planning Commission will do all that you can to try to work with this business owner to keep him there and come to some mutual agreement where he can provide a good service and income to the city as well. Thank you for hearing my comments.
I also am a resident here, and I pay a lot of taxes.
I'm sorry, can you state your name?
Terry Williams. Ron is my husband. I've only been here 6 years, and I came from the Bay Area, which is bursting at the seams, just like Paso is growing and getting rid of the small companies and making you like have to put up with potholes, Fremont has potholes, roundabouts, 3-story tall buildings that are going to go up right on Creston, which I fought for in Fremont not to do 3-story high density. It's kind of sad to see Paso going the way of Fremont. And I don't know if you've ever been to Fremont, but it was a lot like Paso back in the day. Small businesses need our support. I think the property looks way better. I've watched how it's developed. I believe back at the gas station, they're digging up and doing more parking and things there. And I don't know if the permitting or whatever that's happening there, it just shows you that they need more space. And if he does a retaining wall, I think the fence is adequate and it looks private. I think it looks way better. And I just think that he's a young man that's doing a good job and a service for our community, and we need to support him. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marty Difflay, and I live on Orchard Drive, which is just uphill from the property that we're talking about. I did submit a email comment and was asked to present again this evening. This business is a general nuisance to the neighborhood. It's used to be repair, but has become the storehouse for multiple autos and trucks, which interrupt the entire streets, being Creston and Walnut. There's a frequent double parking and moving of vehicles about, which impedes the flow of traffic. Sometimes they're large towing vehicles and such. I travel this road at least twice every day. They're just now applying for a permit and has evidently been delayed while they have carried on without approval. The inconsiderate clogging of the neighborhood makes this business unliked and considered discourteous to the surrounding neighborhood. While you consider this permit, it would be good to pay attention to the actions and the previous complaints from neighbors who have called into the city as well as the police department. It's a safety issue. It's my understanding from the conversation tonight that this business has had opportunities to request approvals to be compliant with the city, but it hasn't happened. And I don't see how it's going to change, as one of the commissioners mentioned. I would recommend that the council consider option 2.
My turn. In all honesty, I've been a Christian for about 5 years, and I know he keeps trying to make it look nice. And
sir, would you state your name? Sorry.
Michael Martin.
Thank you.
I know he keeps trying to make it nice and just try to keep, everything done. I asked him if he got a permit for that mountain that he cut, because I was going to yell at him. He did. He built that fence to try to keep everything nice looking. But he's just a small town business owner. And you guys are allowing motels and the whole thing going on. So, but a small town guy, I just don't understand why you guys would pick on the small town guy. I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I'm Shannon Smith. I've been a resident here for 39 years. One thing that I would like to address to the resident that lives on Orchard, I'm not sure how she thinks that cars needing repair are able to get there without a tow truck. Of course you're going to see tow trucks going in and out of an auto repair shop. That's primarily how they move when a car is broken. As far as the traffic goes, that's a really heavy traffic area. I've seen children walking across the street and nobody pays attention. I think maybe this is beyond this issue and maybe needing a 4-way stop, traffic light. It's not a safe area to make a left out of. As far as the aerial photos that were shown, drive-by photos, it really doesn't give an accurate example of what goes on. One of those vehicles could have been mine dropping off a sandwich. So to count that as we're doing a bunch of repair on thousands of vehicles. People come and go daily. People pick cars up. People get dropped off to pick cars up. That's an extra car that shouldn't be counted as a quick snapshot of an aerial view. I think Christian is a really stand-up member of the community. He helps a lot of people out. He may keep cars there for longer than necessary because someone can't pay to get it towed off the property or can't pay for the repairs. I don't think that he should be docked for that at all. I think the city really needs to do its best to work with him. As far as $11,000 that you've somehow come up with working with him, I see snapshots and paperwork. I don't know how $11,000 adds up, and I really think that maybe providing a bill so that we could all see where the $11,000 is justifiable is kind of in order. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chantel Maldonado. I'm actually Creston, but I work in Paso, and I've done Creston for 15 years. First of all, not only is he the owner of that business, he doesn't sit behind a desk. He is actually the person working with his team. He is involved in his business every day. He drives the tow trucks. My car gets worked on there just like everybody else. You have to understand, Christian's been there for a very long time, and of course there's going to be more cars now than there was back in the beginning. That just shows you that he's an honorable and stand-up mechanic because word of mouth. He doesn't do any advertising. If somebody needs help and they can't afford it, he's helped them out. He's a part of the community, puts back. He drives the Vine Street parades for the schools. He's put back into the community for different organizations, Paso High School, donated money. You guys need to work with him. He has put so much money into building the business to look better. Yeah, is there things that he needs to work on? But when he's sitting there working on cars daily, yeah, it might take a little bit longer than the normal standard. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Forrest Sanchez. I live on Shannon Hill Drive, 628 Shannon Hill Drive, which is really close to Christian's auto repair shop. And my family and I walk our dogs by there all the time, and his fence is really beautiful. He should be up for a Paso Beautification Award, not being told to, not being told that it's all going to be over soon, or you're going to have to take the fence down, because he put lights, he put bushes out there. It's really beautified the whole neighborhood. And for the traffic, I'd say most of the traffic comes from the gas station. People double, triple parked outside the gas station because it has the lowest price in gas. But definitely not Christian having tow trucks in the street or anything like that. They pull all the way into his lot. And I walk by there twice a day because I have a lot of dogs and kids. So like, we go by there, we see he's out there, he's worked on my cars, and like the other lady said, or gentleman, he is a really good person for this community. He builds floats for any parade, Pioneer Day, Vine Street, everything. He's done it for years now. Donates his trucks, trailers, anything you could ask him of, he would do it for you. So you guys should go to that Plan 3 and work with him to do whatever it takes to keep this guy going, because he's a really good part of Paso Robles, and you would hate to lose him.
Good evening. My name is Yesenia Chavarria. Buenas noches. Mi nombre es Yesenia Chavarria. I am here supporting a local business owner, Christian. As you can tell, this has been a difficult process to navigate, especially during a pandemic when the priority of business owners was to survive. One of the commissioners stated the issue of cars staying longer, and we are still seeing a backlog due to goods due to the pandemic. So just be mindful in giving grace to a business owner. I also want to make sure that the development was made back in April 14th of 1986. It has not been revised for 36 years. I think it's overdue for a revision. As you can tell, Paso Robles is changing, and I think this is an opportunity for commissioners to work with the community. As you can tell, tonight's tremendous turnout for this local business owner speaks volumes of the investment to support Christian. also making note that Christian has made changes in good faith. I appreciate the support of the Planning Commission to support and help Christian. Also, the options are quite wonderful. Option 3 is probably the best. The most important part that we ask is that you give fair and reasonable consideration for this business owner. Christian not only is a business owner, but he provides jobs for local community members, as well as a provider for his family and stimulates our local economy. I do ask that you hear tonight the community. If you are here to support Christian, I know not everyone is taking public comment, but if you're here to support Christian, please raise your hand. So you have a room full of people that are here tonight, but also could not make it, or else I think this room would have been completely full. So I appreciate your time and energy, and let's keep this local business owner in business. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Jen Donaldson, and this is my son, Chase Donaldson. We have lived here about 7 years in Paso. We came from San Diego, so coming to a small town, having the opportunity to meet Christian in a sense where I met him at our children's school, and he was the first to volunteer to build a Christmas float with us. He selflessly every year has given us his time, his commitment, his support. And really funny, I texted him the other day and said, I know your child does not go to Flamson, but hey, can we build a float again? He said, absolutely. He's one of the most selfless men I've ever met. He's willing to always be out there for the community. He is there with the kids. He's just amazing. He has a wonderful business that supports this community. I referred many to him. I trust him completely. So I just encourage you to make sure he's able to stay in business. He's one very incredibly selfless man. Thank you.
I probably don't need that. I'm Gary Hubbard. I came here tonight to tout Christian's professionalism, his integrity, his honesty, his knowledge. And then I looked up at this board and I found where you people apparently have the power to not only take this man's business away from him, but shut it down so the very structure that he owns can no longer serve as that kind of structure. I've been in this town for 38 years. I've run a plumbing company for 38 years. If this is the town that we now live in, I'm in the wrong damn town.
My name is Juan Jimenez. I'm a little nervous, but we all got to speak up.
Can you pull the
the
sir?
CPU says from
Sir, can you?
1987.
Excuse me, sir. Can you pull the microphone toward you?
Sorry.
There you go.
There you
That's
go.
perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Like I said, I'm a little nervous. The CPU says 1987. Yeah, it's 36 years ago. We are in 2023. Look how many cars are now in Paso Robles. Look at the traffic we have everywhere in Paso Robles. I hate it because it takes me, I live by the high school. It takes me about 30 minutes to get to Georgia Brown because of the traffic. So for everybody, that's just how many cars there is in Paso for Christian to fix. So yeah, as Paso is growing, it's making this flow bigger for any mechanic in Paso Robles. So they're all gonna have the same issue with overflow. And for shops, it's hard to find a shop in Paso Robles because I am a business owner and I have to be mobile because there's no little shops for me to afford. And then how are growing businesses or little businesses supposed to bring more revenue for the city if little businesses can't do business in Paso? And yeah, Christian might have a lot of cars during the day, but everybody's coming in. I'll be there sometimes, and about 10 cars show up, and there's no parking, but they all needed something to get fixed on, and that's when all these pictures get taken. So look at it at night. He cleans it up. It's nice and neat. He keeps it nice and neat during the night, and he tries to during the day. It's just people need their cars worked on, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Oh, does anybody else have any comment, public comment? No, sir, I'm sorry. But is there anybody online right now, Marcy?
There's
on the
no
phone?
callers.
No callers? Okay, last call for anybody want to comment?
My name is Jake Rothman. I'm a resident in Paso Robles and a small business owner. I don't know Mr. Mercado, but I appreciate the way that the city and the planning commission has worked with him, and it sounds like he's also tried to make good faith effort to stay in compliance. I know building a small business is challenging, but I think we are the backbone of the community. So I'm hopeful that the city and the commission will continue to work with him and help him to be able to continue his business in a way that is, for the benefit of all of Paso Robles.
Good evening. My name is Liz Valdez. I work for Christian. I'm actually his secretary, receptionist, and sometimes I kind of do a little bit of everything in there. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Christian. Christian frustrates me and he irritates me, but because sometimes he forgets that in a business needs money to survive, to push forward. And he's always cutting people breaks. Someone comes in and they can't afford their repair. You know what, don't forget, don't worry about it next time. Or you know what, you can't pay me tomorrow or pay me the next day, pay me next month. And I tell him, like, Christian, we're a business. Do we have a lot of things to work on? Of course we do. Can we improve? Yes, we can. But Christian he's not there to make money. He's there to help the community. He's there to help you get your car working in a safe way for where your safety is his first and only concern. And I would hate for him to lose that ability to run his business because he really is trying to just help everybody. Thank you.
Okay, still no callers, Marcy?
No callers.
Okay, so thank you. We're going to close public comment. Appreciate all your comments. If staff would like to direct any answers to any particular questions, is there any?
I don't really have any
I don't think there were many direct questions.
If there are any, I'd be happy to answer them.
So moving on, I think what we'll do is we'll move to commissioners' comments. And I think we'll start with Commissioner Marlowe again.
Yeah, so I appreciate everybody. I think maybe you guys misunderstood my question. So I believe in small businesses. I've worked for a small auto shop, and I think that you're absolutely right. There's more people, therefore more cars. And I think that, based on how long cars are there and how long parts are there, you're doing more than minor work, which I think there's a need for in Paso, right? If you're taking 3 to 4 days to get parts, minor work, alternators, brakes, you should be able to get those pretty quickly. I think that this business is a good business for the community. I think that obviously it shows with everyone here. And I think that with the right steps and the right management, changing the conditional use to allow you to store in that area and make it a presentable area for the business, for the community, while allowing you to continue to bring in more cars, because as the economy has challenges, as things have challenges, people don't buy new cars. They keep onto their cars. So you're just going to continue to get more cars in there. And I think that obviously a lot of people have worked with him. He seems like a really nice guy. And I think, to be honest, making an adjustment to the condition with the right parameters to allow him to do major work or longer work with, some not storage. I think that the amount of cars there some of those have probably been there for a while. I've been around some shops, but week, 2 weeks, whatever. I think that my opinion would be to work with them and change the conditions with the right steps to allow him to continue to grow his business and be successful. And that's what I'd like to see. So.
Mr. Conley.
Yeah, I see that overwhelmingly the audience favors the business and would like to see the commission here work with the applicant to continue business while the city and the applicant to work out what standards are in compliance to the 87 CUP. I think there's an under theme here that everything goes back to the 87 CUP and that it's out of date. And there needs to be some type of recognition that the CUP might need to be amended, but not in a way that revokes the business ability to continue to work, to be in compliance to a CUP while updating it so that it's not a vehicle by which it increases the amount of storage, because storage is not allowed for this permitting or this zoning. As far as the storage of vehicles, it's not an approved use. So we need to find a way to allow the business to continue, but stay in compliant with the zoning that doesn't allow for storage of vehicles. And so in so doing, I don't really see an option here that fits that exactly. If you look at the detailed report, that allows an amendment to the CUP, but allows the business to continue while that amendment addresses specific site issues and allows the type of landscaping, retaining walls, maybe the number of vehicles on the site for storage needs to be up to a standard that's reasonable. If that's based on the square footage of the lot or the business, maybe that needs to be reevaluated. But I don't see an option here that specifically allows the Planning Commission to say, hey, this is the right one. So I'm just thinking out loud that maybe we pick an option here that does some of what we're saying here. I mean, if I look at option 2, it says it would revoke the CUP of 87. And maybe that's the right option, but to allow the business to continue and then amend it or put a new CUP. So I'm kind of wrestling with the options here as to which one fits best for the business, as we heard from the audience, and also fits well for the city and the prior complaints, and brings it to a closure where we're not visiting this again in 3 years or 2 years.
Mr. Conley, are you maybe thinking option 3 then?
Yes, I think option 3 is good, but the question there is the applicant willing to submit site plans and have a 15-foot setback, subject to the Planning Commission to look at the landscaping and the site plans. Is the applicant willing to do option 3? So that's all I have.
Commissioner Davis, do you have any comments?
Well, I think I agree with the audience. We need to keep Chris here in business. We need to help him be successful. How we do that, I'm kind of torn. I'm with you. I'm torn. Do we direct him to bring his current CUP and let him stay in business? We all want that. Or do we direct staff option 3? That might be a cost. I'm worried about that. Maybe cost is part of the reason that we haven't gotten the retaining wall. I don't know the answers to those things. I do want to be sensitive to the neighborhood who may not want to look at a storage area. And so I think that's something that needs to be debated fully with the committee if we can change our course there. But I definitely want to see Christian stay in business and try to come to a win. Not exactly how that is, but that's where I.
Commissioner Kogler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like my fellow commissioners, I certainly want to see Christian stay in business on this site. I think he certainly does serve the community well. Having said that, there are certain rules of operation in this community for any business, and I think that has to be complied with. My question that I asked earlier on about the going back to 1987 on the conditional use permit, and possibly was there ever any initiative to change that over time? I think that time has come, and I personally would favor option 3, which goes through, it creates a new conditional use permit. I don't think, though, that's carte blanche to say you can do whatever you want to, because the ordinance does define that. But I think within that permit language, things like the number of cars on site can be addressed. I think there needs to be a definition of the specific repairs. We don't have a definition for minor repair, but in a conditional use permit, you can spell out specifically what can be done. Oil changes, transmissions, whatever the tasks might be. And then we've got a recollection or a reference rather of those items that are allowed on site. I mentioned that I had a conversation briefly with the owner, and he indicated to me at one point in time that he had auto transports coming on the site, and I was perplexed by that. He went on to say that he was prepping used cars for an major auto business down in Slow. That's the kind of intensity I do not think fits on this site. It's not big enough. And I don't know what the nature of that was, but those kinds of things could be defined in the conditional use permit. The kinds of things that he's been doing that serve the community and get people in and out and get cars repaired and get on their way, those are the things I'm sure he's very good at, the kinds of things we should move to establish and allow there. I think a conditional use permit that's updated hopefully could speak to the storage capacity issue. What is the capacity of storage? Is it related as an accessory use to the fact that X number of cars have to sit there for so long a period of time, so there might be a reason to have a certain amount of storage? I did note when I was standing on the site that there are a number of vehicles there that are in extreme disrepair and or extremely dirty, which anecdotally tells me they've been there for a long time. And I think that kind of storage probably doesn't fit with the storage of a customer who needs to get a new part and it's taking 4 days to get the part in. That vehicle sitting on site is perfectly legitimate for the business. So I would hope that we could draw the line around a series of things that allow this business to kind of operate as it has, but within the constraints of controlling specifically what's allowed and what conditions that would be allowed within, and then bringing back a permit, the landscape provisions and so forth would certainly be a consideration as a part of that. So my own personal preference would be to move towards option 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kogler. I struggle with a couple things here. I've always been an advocate for the required use like this in this town, and as some may know or not, Combine was a big success that we altered so we could get shops like that in there for small business owners. I struggle with this because I really would hate to see this CUP disappear. I know when Mr. Roget sold it, I know that probably the main reason that Christian bought it was because of the CUP, which I could understand that use there and the allowed use was very important at the time and is important today. And I struggle with the fact that I really feel that the city has made a lot of effort to work with Christian, and it seems like in some ways there's not the reciprocation back. So I think the fear is, for me, as much as I want to see option 3, because I'd like to see him stay in business, I'd like to see him provide that service, because these types of locations are so limited in our town and are so needed. I fully believe that. But at the same time, there are rules that we've got to work with, and I feel that the city has been continually trying to give Christian those guidelines and those rules, and I don't know whether it's, as his secretary said, he's not, always paying attention and, he doesn't treat it like he's running a business. I don't know. But I feel that the city attorneys, the letters that have been written, the correspondence when there's no action back. I think that's what's most disheartening to me, because I am an advocate of this type of use. I've fought for it on Paso Robles Street. I fought for changes to have combine, and I believe that our city needs it. But when I see this and it feels like there's disregard for what the city is trying to maintain, some type of order, it frustrates me because, and it may be financially motivated. I don't know. That's not clear here. Maybe if the applicant would have spoken to that, I get it. COVID, parts taking longer, cars need to be, left on site for a few days. Maybe that's some way to work it out. I go by there a lot. I've seen it. I've seen the transport trucks. I've seen lots of cars sitting there. I've seen them on the streets, what have you. I know it gets busy during the day, especially at an automotive repair shop. But I have to be honest with you. That's the part I'm struggling with, is that I want to see Christian stay in business. I want to see him retain that location, and I would really hate to see that CUP go away. I do think it needs to be brought up to date for Christian's use. I think that would be a smart decision on Christian's behalf, okay? And Christian has to be the one that does that, and he's had the opportunity since 2018 when the Planning Commission saw this the first time. And I think that's what I'm struggling with, is because he's had that opportunity and it seems like it hasn't gotten anywhere. Now, in the back of my mind, I give a little bit of credence to the fact, I shouldn't say credence, but a little bit of leeway because of COVID. I get it. A lot of things were weird during COVID, and we're seeing a little bit of fallout from that still, to some extent. But at the same time, I say to myself, we have to hold the line somewhere in saying some things have to get completed. Some things like the grading and retaining wall, that's a requirement that you signed up for when you pulled those permits. And I get it. Maybe it's a financial thing. I don't know. Maybe you need more time. But I feel like that's been an effort that the city gave you that opportunity to work with it. And I'd like to see that completed. That would be a step to me saying, hey, I, Christian, want to move this forward. I want to work with you guys, and I want to make it happen. You did it in 2018, or at least 2022, when you finally pulled the permits for grading. But the retaining wall is not there. They can't sign it off. All that's still lingering. The permit, there's been no inspection as of tonight. So that's the part I'm wrestling with. I feel all of the empathy that my fellow commissioners have. I want to see Christian stay in business. I grew up in this town. I don't want to see this city, become a police force against business owners. That's not the point. But we do have some rules that we have to maintain and some type of order. The gentleman from Beta, when they built their new facility out there on the east side of town, they went through quite a lot of planning and design and work with the city to make that site beautiful. And it is a nice site, but they're getting a lot done there. I'm tangenting off here, and I don't want to. I'm struggling with this because I want to go with option 3, but I gotta say, I don't know how we can do this, Darren, but I feel like we have to have some stopgaps, some actual action from the applicant that actually moves this forward. In my mind, I feel like we've got to go back to a certain part of the original CUP for the time being. If Christian would like to submit for changes to that CUP, and I could see that some of it's just real simple, like adding on space to the actual mapped out design of the original CUP, which I get it. And that probably wasn't even measured. Knowing Rogan, and I know him for a lot of years, he probably didn't measure that out in accordance with his property line. That being said, I feel like going back to some point of the original CUP so that you can continue operating, but that's going to take action from the applicant. The applicant's going to have to make that effort happen. And I don't know how we can hold you to that. So that'll be a question for staff. But at the same time, then I would agree with my fellow commissioners. I feel the CUP would be served best if you came in and made those revisions. As for a storage yard, I hate to break it to you. I don't see anywhere in the code that it allows for a storage yard. And trust me, I've looked all over the city for places like that for other applicants. So I can tell you, I understand the struggle. I'm not saying that I don't understand that. I'm just saying I don't see that being a possibility under this. I can see that maybe some added parking. I do have a little confusion because there's notes in there, and I meant to bring it up here. This is a question I had earlier. It talks about 7 spaces. At the same time, I noted mention of 12 spaces, and I counted like 12 or 13 spaces, and maybe that's not including in the bay. So maybe we want to take a look at that as well too, which would give him a few more sites other than 7. But those are my comments right now, and if anybody else would like to comment on that, I'm welcome to hear it from my fellow commissioners. So I'll defer back to my fellow commissioners right now.
Well, I would agree that you definitely, there's rules, we have to follow them, the long-term storage. I think that we have an option 4 to provide an alternate direction, and maybe the city attorney and the planning department can help us with that, where we can say, yep, we want to make a plan within so many days, we would like to amend it. During that time, you have to follow the rules as is, and within a certain amount of time, you have to finish the work that's on site and clean it up to the current standard. We'll work with you to amend that standard, and then once that standard's amended, then you can make the adjustments to move forward, right? So like I don't know if we can put timelines to those things, but I think that, in 60 days, we review, or whatever the applicant, effort puts in to make that amendment. But it's got to, we only have one conditional use permit, and either we make an adjustment now to that, or we go to what's currently approved, and then we make a plan to make an adjustment, and he puts in the effort to get it to where it needs to go. I think that's an option 4 would be, something that we could look into.
Mr. Chairman, and
Yes,
we
sir.
can get the city attorney to talk to us a little bit about the timelines, but I think that, as we're talking about option 3, if we're letting the applicant know they need to submit to apply for a conditional use permit, I'm assuming he's going to apply pretty much what is out there right now. He's going to want to keep the fence up the way it is. He's going to want to store what's being there. He's going to want the size of the storage yard to be the same. He's done that. That's what I'm assuming he's visioning, and that's what I could foresee him submitting and wanting to come back to planning commission with. We can, talk to him about setbacks for fencing and landscaping, that kind of thing. But I think as the planning commission thinks about option 3, it would be helpful to understand helpful for the applicant as well to understand if the submittal for the amendment was similar to what's out there now, is that something the planning commission would consider or not?
Well, that's why, and thank you, Darren, but that's why, for me, I was saying that I think we have to go back to the current CUP as it stands, in my opinion. That keeps him in business, and if we can find measured ways to move it forward, so that he can come back and resubmit either for a new CUP or an amendment to the CUP, which might actually be the cleanest avenue for him. I'm not sure. There may be other commissioners that have opinions on that, but that's what I was getting at. So I appreciate the
And option
clarification.
3 would be an amendment.
To the
Staff's
CUP.
recommendation was option 1 to go back
To the CUP.
Correct. The
Right.
original.
Right. And then on top of that, we could add and say, come up with other terms to that, basically.
Separate from this, someone can apply to request an amendment.
Correct.
Anyway, so.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarification. Commissioner Conley, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I think maybe now would be a time to hear from the city attorney if there's anything we should be considering. But I agree with Commissioner Marlowe that there needs to be a phased approach where they continue to work like an option 1 while they submit option 3, which would be an amendment. And there needs to be some time frame that says, hey, within 60 days, you apply for you get into compliance first, and then another 60 days you apply for an amendment. And we'll work with you on what is doable for the zoning and what is doable as far as your requests for that amendment. If you have certain requests to do X, Y, Z, we can tell you X will work, but maybe Z won't. And we can talk about why maybe. But with regard to moving forward, I think there needs to be a phased approach. There probably needs to be an amendment to the CUP, because going down this road and having problems in the future and continuing to beat our head against the wall and having this brought before us again is not the way to go. So I think there needs to be a phased approach towards an amendment while with timeframes for the applicant to get into compliance with the original CUP and a time frame if he wants to anything different to submit an amendment. So, but I would like to hear what the attorney, if we're ready to do that, suggests.
Any other commissioners want to comment first, or I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Annie.
No, I just thought this was the time to jump in, so feel free to cut me off if you need to. And Denise, if you have anything to add, please feel free to jump in as well. I know you're there in person. And I think the applicant is there in person as well. Is that correct?
The applicant is here. That's correct.
Okay, good. Nice to have everyone in the same room. So what I'm going to say is I think if the idea is that you would like to allow the applicant, I'll call it a grace period, to continue to operate essentially as is while we work with the applicant to determine what the future of the business might look like, then option 3 is probably going to be your best bet. And what that would look like is just a motion to, and you can put timelines on this, to direct staff to work with the applicant to determine what conditions would need to change. So we'd bring it back as a formal CUP amendment. It would come back to this planning commission. You would get to see the specifics at that point of what the applicant's proposing, what the city feels we can live with. And then, of course, neighbors and other residents would have the opportunity to comment again at that time. But that would be what would allow you to take what exists currently and segue it into a modified version of the CUP that better meets the current demand. If you choose option 1, or maybe if you say, we're going to give you 30 days, property owner or CUP holder to come in and reapply for that modification. And if within those 30 days, if you have not met that criteria, you haven't come in, you haven't applied, you haven't told us what you want to do, then we're going to come back at the next planning commission meeting and exercise option 1 or 2. So I think that's kind of the way that you would frame the time constraint. You would tell the applicant, we're going to give you 30 days or 60 days, whatever you think is reasonable, to come in, work with staff to develop a modification application for your CUP. And if you don't feel that you can do that, or we don't hear from the applicant, then in those 30 or 60 days, we're going to move forward with either a revocation hearing or some kind of determination that the CUP needs to go back to the conditions it's currently on. And if he can't meet those, then at that point, we're back to a potential revocation hearing. So that would be my recommendation. It sounds like you're inclined to let staff work with the applicant. So I would say maybe set a 30 or 60 day window to let that happen, play out. And then hopefully what would happen is we'd be back before you with a formal CUP modification package.
So just to clarify though, this is Denise Hansen. I had understood Commissioner Christensen to be saying that there wouldn't necessarily be a grace period where Mr. Mercado could continue not complying. He would have to go back to the original use, and then there'd be a period of time where he could come in and make an application to revise the CUP. But he had to go back to the original use in the meantime.
Just to kind of clarify, I was referring back to number 1 in the sense that I wanted to keep his business moving forward. I was saying I don't know if that meant going back to the original use entirely or not. I get what Anna's saying. So there's more clarification now that she's actually kind of spelled out kind of what I was thinking, which is great. She put it into words where I couldn't have. So that was very helpful.
All right.
Does that seem like it would work? I know there are some conditions on the site currently that are outside of what the current CUP allows. So, to me, it seems like if we're going to set a hard deadline for the applicant to come back with modifications that would address those conditions, then, we can kind of leave status quo for now with the caveat that we would be back in 30 or 60 days to re-examine the issue. And if there's been no compliance and no effort to meet with staff to work towards a modification, then at that point we would schedule a revocation hearing.
I would think that at a minimum, though, we need to have some kind of a timeline for him to complete the grading, including the wall permit, as part of that process, and not to just say that could remain the status quo pending the
Okay, that makes sense.
So what I'm hearing is one of the ideas was you guys have heard as well, but I agree. There would have to be some type of time frame to help motivate Christian to get the wall done and the grading signed off. And we could build that into part of a separate timeline, but running concurrent at that time, it sounds like. To me, I'm kind of leaning towards this option. I'm speaking to my fellow commissioners as a process that I think would maybe help staff. I don't know, Darren, if what she's saying makes sense, but for me, I feel like it would satisfy. That doesn't mean that the fence ultimately stays where it's at, right? We'd still need to work through the remainder of that plan per se, whatever he puts forward. But I think that in my mind, it gives him an opportunity to move and work with us. And we get an opportunity to work with him, but we have to have a timeline because it's just the way the city works. We have to have some kind of measuring guide points that we can have stopgaps in case you change your mind. So that's the kind of the way I'm seeing it. Any other commissioners have comment?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I think it's also important to note that if the commission is directing the applicant or directing staff to go forward with 3, which is telling the applicant needs to submit for an amendment, he needs to get the appropriate people to put together a package to submit for the planning commission process. Design professionals, someone who can provide a plan that the planning commission is going to be able to understand with a project description that explains what's happening there. And someone who can go through the zoning code and do their homework to figure out what setbacks are, what is, accessory. Staff doesn't have the ability to, we can work with them, but I want to make sure you understand that we're going to give him a list of things that he needs to provide for this application and for this amendment. And it's going to require having to hire people to help him do that so that we have plans that are to scale and are clear that show the planning commission what he's proposing to do. And I want to make sure that that's understood. And I think it's going to take some time for that to happen. So I don't want to say that he needs to submit this in X number of days because we want to make sure he does it so that everything's successful, and we're happy to work with him with the pre-application and go over plans and help him with that. But as you're thinking about what to do and timing, I want to make sure he has time to get his team together to provide a successful application.
Good point. And I see some of the team members here tonight that can help him find some of those people. In the audience, he has good people that he knows, so hopefully that can happen too. But that's a good point. Thanks, Darren. Commissioner Kogler.
Yeah, I'm just taking this all in. I'm wondering, I agree with the time frame thing, and I'm wondering, and I'm just throwing this out to the commission, if a reasonable time frame could be something to the effect of that we require that the grading and retaining wall construction be completed within 90 days. And then after that completion, he has 60 days to provide an amended conditional use permit application, which really gives him 5 months to parallel track the design work that's necessary to put together this CUP application and then to actually submit it. I don't want to let this languish forever, but I don't want to put him under a time frame that's unrealistic either. And so just for food for thought for the commission, that was my initial reaction.
Yeah, this is Eric Marlowe. So I would agree with the timeline. I think that, and you would have the option to go, okay, maybe I can't do this many cars, or I'm not able to make this amendment. And then you would have to go back to the original requirement for the conditional use permit, right? Like I'd be okay with that, but it's kind of like 3 strikes, you're out. If you do get an additional conditional use permit and then you violate that conditional use permit, like I want to support you, but if it comes back here for a 3rd time, like likely on my end, I'm going to say, no, that, we're willing to work with you. The city is working with you, but I think that's like, if you make the adjustments, you agree to those terms, those are the terms. So you're going to have to understand that that's the requirement, right? And so I think that, everyone's willing to work with you. I think you're doing a good job and you're a good member of the community, but like, you have to make a decision on how you want to approach that. And that's just going to be fair across the board because it takes a lot of effort from everybody. These guys are really, really busy and they're working with you a lot. And if for some reason it gets a little out of control again, like you're going to have to rope it in real quick because if it comes back here, it's probably not going to end super well, to be completely honest.
Correct.
So when the complaints come in, I don't get told, so I don't know what's going on. That's where I have a hard time until I get a letter saying, hey, you've got to go to the meeting. I'm like, I was never
But you know the
told.
rules of the use permit, correct? You have that document.
So let's,
Yes.
I appreciate it, Commissioner Marlowe, I'm sorry. I wanted you to finish with your comments. You go ahead and finish your
No,
comments.
sorry.
Okay. So does any other commissioners have any comments at this point in time? Any other suggestions? I'm kind of leaning towards Mr. Kogler's suggestion timeline-wise. I just don't know, does that fall under number 1 or number 3? What best serves that? Would you like to make a motion?
Sure, let's give it a shot. It's number 3 in my mind. I would move that, and this may take some massaging, but for starters, I would move that the Planning Commission direct staff to work with the applicant to submit an application to amend conditional use permit 87-006 with specific conditions, one of those being that within 90 days from the date of this action, the grading and retaining wall work shall be completed and inspected by the city. And subsequent to that, within 60 days from that date, no more than 60 days, I guess I should say, the applicant will come forward with the amendment for the conditional use permit. And that conditional use permit should be very specific in its focus on details of the use, types of repairs, number of vehicles, storage capacity related to the service of business itself. And those conditions are taken into account as part of the conditional use permit application. Try that.
Any comments on that?
I have a
Anybody
comment.
second it?
Yeah, I have a comment first. Would the matter be brought before the Planning Commission within that or after that 90 days to see that they have submitted an application for an amendment so that we know if they're on track to finish phase 1 of your motion? Or would there be any requirement for a check-in between the?
Well, my understanding is if they didn't complete the grading and the retaining wall, then that would be a notice by staff and it would come before the Planning Commission for a different decision, either revocation or something else, is the way I understood that. Is that correct?
Yeah, in my mind, it's a 2-step process. You have to complete what you've agreed to complete. You have 90 days to do that. Once staff has inspected that, signed off on that, it moves forward with an amendment application for the conditional use permit. Should that first step fail, presumably staff would take appropriate action and bring that back to this body in concert with the city attorney for other actions.
Okay, then I would second that motion, if that's the clarification.
We have a second. Hang on 1 second, please. Go ahead, Darren.
And just to understand, so staff understands with that motion and second, does that mean keeping the fencing up, allowing the storage, all of that remains the same?
Since I did not go with option number 1, and this is not to predict that I would approve the fence as part of the conditional use permit the way it exists right now, but I think it stays in place for that time period. The vehicles that are there, he may of his own volition hopefully choose to clean some of those up, but the vehicles that are there don't have to be immediately moved until we've gone through this entire process, of which there's no more than about a 5-month window to complete.
So part of that amendment will be considering whether the fencing is appropriate or not, or the storage is appropriate or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Just commenting on that, that's my understanding of it as well. It doesn't mean that the fence is going to be able to remain. Doesn't mean that the storage, if the applicant's really thinking about goodwill, maybe he works on getting a lot of that storage out of there that shouldn't be there. But I think I understand you to mean that it'll just be there for the time being.
I'd like to comment on that as well, because within this first 90 days, if the city, through the engineering department, determines that it needs a retaining wall that has to be signed off by an engineer, or if the existing fence doesn't meet current city standards, it could be a hazard or it has an engineering problem, then that needs to be made known within the first 90 days that they apply for an amendment that, hey, the city engineer or city staff says this will not be in compliance. And those elements that will not be in compliance unless you have an amendment that we can consider, maybe a proposed amendment.
Maybe I
then-
can clarify.
yeah.
So the permit for the wall and was part of the grading permit?
Yes.
So that's already been approved.
Okay.
So, yeah, it would just come back to the fence issue.
Fence issue
As
would be
part of the other part of the amendment. So the wall and the grading is already a permit that's been approved, and the grading has already been started. It's just completing that.
So it's the fence is the only concern, and if that fence doesn't meet standards or safety standards or city standards, then it should probably come down within the first 90 days if that's determined.
If I may offer, one thing you could do is amend the motion to say something more like that you have this initial 90 days to complete the work that's covered by the permit and to correct any current non-conforming site conditions, including removal of the fence. So I think your options are sort of binary with that, right? That you either have him remove the fence pending the amendment to the CUP, or you leave the fence as is pending the amendment of the CUP. But if there's a concern that it might be a safety hazard or that it's so out of compliance with the code that it cannot stay, then you could amend your motion to say that non-conforming site conditions must be corrected in the window, and then we will come back and consider an amendment to allow potentially reestablishment of those uses. No guarantee, of course, but that's one way you could do that.
Commissioner Kogler, I think you want to
Yeah,
comment.
thank you. And thank you for that. I think non-conforming can be sometimes a little bit tricky to define. I think if there clearly are safety issues with the fencing that's gone up, it's going to fall over, it's going to hit somebody on the sidewalk, those things have to be addressed. But otherwise, I presume the fencing is structurally intact and the integrity is there. I would not seek to have that removed until we've gone through the conditional use process to determine whether that fence can stay where it is, whether it gets moved, or gets modified, whether it's landscaped, whatever happens.
I would agree with that. Just the fence looks like it's well built. I think it looks like a decent fence. I think it does provide some sort of barrier, and I think that would be something I would want to see with a full plan later on.
Okay, so the original motion would stay in effect. Does the original second stay in agreement with that? Okay, so
yes,
moving that forward, and we can roll call. Did you capture all that, Warren?
Yes, we've got that all.
Do you want me to reiterate the motion again, or is it, you got it down?
Can I add something before?
No, hang on, I'm sorry.
So what staff has is it's option 3 plus a requirement that within 90 days, the wall and grading be completed and inspected by city. And within 150 days of today, or plus 60 days from the 90 days, a new amended CUP application returned back to Planning Commission that would include all the site issues, storage issues, and landscaping. That if we miss those timelines, it will return to Commission for review for noncompliance, and that there is a grace period for existing conditions except for safety issues.
Okay, thank you. And I will give you 1 second for a comment. Make it brief, please.
So I had two issues. I know rainy season's coming and financials. So I was wondering if I can get like an extra month so I can get into like January to wrapping it up.
For which part?
For the wall, the grading and the wall.
Okay. We'll have to discuss that.
Okay.
Thanks.
As the maker of the motion, I want to accomplish something here and get this done. And I think the chair expressed it very well tonight, that it's never exactly been a two-way street here, and it has to be. But I want to treat you fairly and give you enough time to do it. And given the weather conditions, I could acknowledge that. I would have no problem adding 30 days to the time frame for the completion of the wall grading plan, and then the additional 60 days. So we would have, 160 days total, I guess.
So it'd be 120 days and then 180 days.
Thank you.
Would be my reading of that change.
I think that's correct, yes.
I would agree and second it with that, those changes.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, I just, I really want this to happen. I really want to keep you in business and keep everybody happy. As a planning commissioner, I haven't seen enforcement issues like this, so it's a win-win if we can get this accomplished in that timeline. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Okay.
I would like to second that comment because as a planning commissioner in my second term, I haven't seen an enforcement issue like this as well. So I'm pulling for you. I really want you to make it happen. So I encourage you to please communicate with staff as much as possible and get the right professionals.
Okay.
Any other comments? Roll call.
Commissioner Kogler,
Aye.
Commissioner Connolly,
Aye.
Commissioner Marlowe,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Chairperson Christensen.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Great, thank you. Good luck. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on. I believe we have discussion items, and the next item is a spaceport update. You want a 5-minute break? Sounds like a great idea. 5-minute break, please. 5-minute break. Sorry, Paul. I got the thumbs up. Good job. Thank you. I just read through all the Okay, so we're going to jump to spaceport update. Mr. Sloan?
Opportunity to provide you an update. It's been about 6 months since I was here last. I don't know if I'm allowed to throw it aside, but it was awesome watching y'all work on that last topic. So as a spectator in the room, that was fantastic watching the commissioners take on something that was a challenging thing and watching it come through to, I think, a really great solution. So just an aside from someone who doesn't know much about planning. As a background on this project, as you may recall, real quick refresher, the city partnered with the University of Cal Poly on 3 different work areas. One was on the FAA license application for a spaceport license for horizontal launch. The second workflow area was developing this ecosystem mapping of the types of businesses that we could bring into the tech corridor part of the project. There's 2 different paths. One is working on bringing in getting a license for the airport, and the other is developing sort of the tech park aspect of it, which is where the business attraction would take place. And the third part is on education and workforce, developing a strategy on that, and that part is still ongoing. That's developed a study that the city is paying for, being led by Dr. St. John, on specifically developing workforce for the space industry here in our local area. The industry ecosystem mapping, this is an update from what you saw last time. It's just sort of all the different aspects of the space industry that we could potentially attract to this area. It's a very diverse area with many different parts, and this would be just what they've mapped out on companies we could potentially attract to the area. We also worked with students in design communication, which worked on creating the branding, as well as the stickers, which you all have on your desk there. And so that's sort of the communication side going forward on bringing the project out to the public. The project has a very strong aspect to it, which is different from other spaceports, and that's the educational access to space component. Working with the university, the project originated with Cal Poly simply because of their aerospace engineering department needing access to space. What we've learned along the way is there's 50 universities with aerospace engineering departments across the U.S., all in the same situation. And so there's just been this great convergence of interest. And as you can see here, the project, we're calling it K20, which means not just university, like 4-year degrees and above, but also building a deep bench of talent of K12 with an idea of, for example, high schools have a robotics club. Imagine our high schools having a satellite club where they could design, build, and launch a CubeSat or small sat within a single year. And with the broadband projects underway with the northeast part of town, the airport being super wired in the future, a high school club from somewhere in the Midwest could send their team out here to launch it, but we could stream it live and they could watch it from their high school auditorium somewhere across the country. So that's sort of our positioning, the educational access to space component, which is something that literally no other spaceport is approaching. These are some milestones over the last year. Real quick, in December is when Council approved the agreement with Cal Poly, approving a budget for preparing the FAA spaceport license application. In January, a non-disclosure agreement was signed with a horizontal launch company, one of the space plane companies, that they could provide us access to their technical data, which would be needed for the spaceport application, which is just very precise information about their craft. In February, a delegation from the city, as well as Cal Poly, attended the FAA Commercial Space Transportation Conference in Washington, D.C. While we were there, Cal Poly got together with Arizona State University and Johns Hopkins APL, which is the Advanced Physics Lab, and they met with the National Science Foundation, or the NSF, who is very intrigued by our educational approach. So the NSF has proposed to fund a workshop that we'll be holding here later next year, specifically bringing in the educational partners. While we were in DC, we also met with the AST office of the FAA. That's the office that issues the commercial spaceport licenses. We met with the director of that, Pam Underwood, give her an update, and gave us some good feedback on the project. In March, a draft airport layout plan, or ALP, was sent to the FAA in San Francisco. The project involves working with 2 different offices. The FAA office in San Francisco oversees the general aviation operations of the airport, and then the FAA office in DC is where the spaceport licenses come from. Also in March, the test site, which has been developed in a remote part of the airport, was first used for testing micropropulsion systems that are used for pushing small sats around in space. And this was for the Artemis project, which is a NASA project for returning to the moon in the coming years. In April, city staff, along with Cal Poly team, presented the project at the Cal Poly CubeSat Developers Workshop. Attending the conference was the CEO of a Taiwan-based company that builds small sats, and he was very intrigued by the project. So we spoke with him after the conference. He came up here to Paso. We showed him around the tech corridor and the airport. He spent a fair bit of time with our airport manager, Mark Scandalis, and the gentleman ended up submitting a letter of intent to put an operation here in Paso Robles, which is pretty exciting. And KSBY, after we sort of announced that, did a follow-up interview with him. The link is on the city website, but I can send it to you. It's a great interview with the gentleman, Mr. K is his name, about his interest in working here in Paso Robles and developing a facility to develop CubeSats. In May, we had a joint meeting with both the DC and San Francisco offices of the FAA. So it's brought everybody on the same page along with the city and Cal Poly. And we were asking, okay, this is where we are, what are the next steps specifically? So we were given the direction of submitting the ALP or airport layout plan and the ESP, which is the explosive site plan, for conditional approval. So the ESP, explosive site plan, as Mark likes to say, is a scary word. It basically it's mapping out when you bring in new fuel onto the airport, where will it be stored? So we already have different kinds of fuels that are out there. These next-gen craft actually use, their main fuel is kerosene, traditional jet fuel, which we already have out at the airport. What they use as an oxidizer or source of oxygen when they go out of the atmosphere is hydrogen peroxide. And so once they go beyond atmosphere, the H2O2 of hydrogen peroxide, the second oxygen is burned off in combustion, and the byproduct is literally water. And so that's the additional fuel which would be and theoretically stored out at the airport. So the ESP was developing for that. In June, we met with a company ILS, which is the Integrated Launch Solutions, working with Tartai Engineering, about conducting the explosive site plan study. In July, we contracted with them, and that study was completed in September. And last month in October, the ESP was submitted to the FAA, which is one of the two steps we had to do. At that point, we became aware that a master plan update is needed for the airport overall. So here's the timeline of where we are. The Cal Poly portion for the FAA application is now completed. That used a budget of $27,000. The the explosive site plan is now completed. That was $14,000. The next step would normally have been updating of the airport layout plan, which is basically on the map of the airport, marking where the potential spaceport operations take place. That's about a 3-month operation. However, the FAA pointed out to us that the master plan for the airport, which normally is supposed to be updated every 7 to 10 years, has not been updated in 20. So that's something that we need to do first. And whether or not we ever did a spaceport license, that's something that needs to be done anyway. The good news is it doesn't cost the city anything. It's paid for by a grant from the FAA because the FAA wants master plans updated. So Mark Scandalis, the airport manager, is actively working on that. He has the grant programmed for next year, for 2024, to get that started at the beginning of the year. That process takes about 15 to 18 months. And then once that's completed, then we'll continue on with adding the part about the spaceport on the map, and then we'll be submitting that to the FAA for conditional approval. So we're in a bit of a administrative pause, as it were, on the application side, but as the heading says, we have parallel tracks. One is licensing, and the other is tech corridor. So while Mark is working on that with the FAA for updating master plan, we'll be working on the tech corridor side. So here's an updated map from what we showed you in the past, the magenta line, more or less outlining what we call the tech corridor, with Cuesta North Campus in the lower left-hand corner, and then the airport centrally in the upper right-hand part. The areas highlighted in yellow are areas on the airport proper, on property, that are available for lease, whether for aeronautical or non-aeronautical use. And that's something that can be managed by the airport manager and airport commission, et cetera. The green areas are private sector developments. Some of them have names like Paso Commons and the Landing, which you're familiar with. And that's basically our inventory for business attraction, because you need to have a place to attract businesses to. So regardless of what we're successful in bringing here, any project that moves forward with something being built will pass in front of the Planning Commission like any other project would. So that's just sort of the areas we have to begin working to bring in businesses. What we have as far as in our toolkit to start right now is the testing site, as I mentioned, which was built on the sort of remote part of the airport on the east side. This was an area that was originally built when the airport was built back in World War II. And the city reconditioned the access to it using recycled asphalt from street repairs. And so there's Mayor Hammond standing out there. And so now this is a place where companies can come and do testing outdoors. We also arranged for Marcus put together some pricing for storing containers out there so they don't have to schlep their equipment back and forth. We have our first tenant who's out there permanently using it as a test site. And we've had, they test these micropropulsion systems, which are about the size of your thumb. They generate about 5 pounds of thrust. And they're all bench tested outside. We've had companies like Boeing and others come to watch the tests. One of the companies that's been there to see it usually does their testing at the spaceport in Huntsville, Alabama. And they were just amazed at how easy it is to work in Paso. So that little by little, that's our foot in the door. The airport has installed a new gate on the east side of the airport coming off Beacon with a gate code. So now anyone who's renting the use of that can have their own access and they can come as is convenient. So this is sort of what we have to going to market while we work on the licensing side. We have the testing site, the very low financial barrier to entry, $100 a month to store containers. We have 2 out there right now, $150 a day to rent usage of the test site, of course, with safety plans required. Then as far as square foot lease amounts, this was approved by council a couple months ago. We have an aeronautical and a non-aeronautical use rate. And then just the very areas, those are the areas that the airport controls. And then also for available for rent for just people looking to do activities at the airport. We have the conference room and we have equipment that can be used, forklift generator, et cetera. So that's sort of what we have as our lead-in offering to people to get them to come here. And if they discover, how easy it is to work here in Paso and how we're pro-business, then they eventually work to have a footprint and buildings and all that. This is the team from Cal Poly that worked on the project. Matthew Bornhorst up in the upper left corner, he was the student lead. He graduated last year and was immediately hired by SpaceX, now works for Elon Musk, gives you an idea of the talent we had. The student lead that took over after him was Anmol Sharma, who is fourth from the left up there, incredibly bright young woman. On the far right, Miriam Gabai is the graphic communication designer who created the stickers that you have there in front of you. And there's the team from Cal Poly, then Mark Scandelis and myself. Additionally, this year, just recently, the city of Paso became members of the Global Spaceport Alliance. As I highlighted there, this is an organization that provides its members with information, data, research, and networking needed for the successful planning and operation of spaceports around the world. And because of that, I'm involved. I get to participate in these very interesting webinars. Was on one today with spaceports and people associated with spaceports. What's really interesting on the workforce side is what they're saying is it's not the engineers that are the problem. It'll be going forward, their bottleneck is the technicians. They literally say in very technical language, we need people who know how to build stuff and fix stuff. It's not the design engineers. They need people who can work with their hands. So it's literally the people who go through, coming out of industrial arts or STEM programs or Skills USA, can go through a 6-month or 1-year technical training program. And that's exactly what the industry will be needing going forward. So that's really a good fit for us. Also, as members, we get free admission to the Global Spaceport Summit. I'll be attending that. It's actually 3 conferences in one. You see there, Commercial Space Week in Orlando, end of January for about a week. And just for fun, last but not least, in case you haven't already seen it, the Mid-State Fair announced the theme for next year, which is wide open spaces. I just thought it was fun because Mayor Martin always said we were pioneering commercial space, and I just thought that was great that we have sort of a space theme for the fair. With that, thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Davis.
I have one question. When it goes to the airport master plan, what bodies in the city review that? Is the airport commission, does planning commission see that? It's a master plan update.
I honestly don't know. Since it hasn't been done in 20 years, but I imagine definitely the airport commission, probably you guys too. I just don't know. Sorry, it's a good question. I'll ask the airport manager.
Yeah, I would just think, I mean, you're following 2 tracks and it sounds like it's being paid for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was just curious if that's something we should anticipate seeing.
So Kaufman and Associates is the consultant that will work on that, and it's about a 15 to 18 month process. So I can find out and definitely get back to you or through Mr. Frace. Yeah.
And then you mentioned that 30 to 50 year lease, is that standard in the industry?
30 to 50 year leases?
Yeah.
It has been for airports. They're trying to do less time now. They're trying to do lesser time. Some of you have leases out there, as you know, but that's what has been in the past. And so they're looking to have more flexibility, maybe 30 years is maybe more standard. And a lot of that would be determined as we come to more with, we divide up the lots that are the areas that can be leased. And that'll be part of the master plan update for the airport. We'll be designating those areas that we can lease. And then basically the airport commission will decide, are we leasing them for 29 years or 30 or 40?
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Frace. Do you know, does the master airport update come to the planning commission?
That's a good question. We should look into that.
Okay.
Commissioner Kogler.
Thank you. I would hope it would come to us at least as an informational item.
At least it will. I can guarantee you that.
I don't have any real questions. I would compliment the work you've been doing as I've done before. I do have one little question. The thruster that's the size of my thumb, it's tested outside. Does it make any noise? Is it like a little?
It makes some noise, but it's not. Yeah, it's not very loud. When you look at the setup, it's really kind of funny. It's very technical, but it's like a picnic table with this thing clamped on the end, and then 10 people on laptops about 10 feet away with just studying whatever it's doing, and it has like about 5 pounds of thrust. And so it looks just like little fluted thing off the end. So it has. I haven't been there when they're actually testing. I've seen the setup, but it's not terribly loud. They're not wearing like headpieces or anything like that. So.
That's exactly what actually I pictured, pretty casual kind of thing. The reason I asked what was behind the question was just, I'm getting questions from the community about noise, and there's a perception that there's going to be a lot of noise when this happens, and giant planes are going to be coming in and all this stuff, and I try to preach the gospel as I know it to be. But just that's an issue in the community, which is why I was curious.
Yeah, and I just had a conversation with a gentleman on that. He came up we had a booth at the airport day, 50th anniversary of the airport, and we were there with Cal Poly, and he was new to the area, moved here about 18 months ago, and he was very concerned, and the impression he had wasn't necessarily space planes. He thought we were going to have 737s taking off and landing all day, and I wasn't sure how we got from little micro propulsion things to that, but I understand you're fleeing from LA, that's the last thing you want, but people just sort of nervous that they don't want that. So that's nothing what we're talking about. I can tell you with the specs of the space plane, we have the decibel levels. It's about, you can download the special decibel ratings on the FAA website. It's comparable to a lawnmower or a snowmobile. That's the decibel level of the space planes. And you've seen pictures, they're not very big. They're the size of a Cessna.
Commissioner Marlowe.
I had a question, then I got distracted, so come back to me. I was thinking about a bunch of things. Oh, with those mini propulsion things, is there a notice airman issued when those are being launched so that GA guys are aware that there are site things going on? It's an aviation thing. So like when an airport has an event or something going on, they issue a notice to airmen so people are aware that someone coming in, because one of those, I don't think they go very far, but as they get bigger, they could go rogue. And I'm just questioning. Curious, really.
It's a great question, actually, because people were concerned, does this interfere with, and nothing flies. Nothing actually leaves the bench. It's all bench testing.
Okay.
It's literally just a thing bolted on the edge of the table. And so nothing flies around. So it's just the actual nozzle at the end of the earth.
Is there any plan to do any sort of flight testing off that strip? Okay. And then as far as like the horizontal spacecraft, I mean, you already got small jets taking off in and out of there. Just a comment, I think that it's not going to be any louder than those things. So I don't think there's going to be any additional impact from noise. I don't think anyone will even notice, really.
That is true. These are by far not the loudest thing flying out of Paso right now.
No, the CAL FIRE planes are pretty loud, so.
Commissioner Conley.
I have a question with regard to the additional 18-month review to get the airport in compliance with master plan. Is that going to lose any opportunity for letters of interest or competition and other spaceports getting ahead of us? will there be in other words, will there be a downside to that or a cost to that 18-month?
Well, there's not a cost per se. I mean, you can argue, I suppose, a lost opportunity cost from a business standpoint. The actual cost to do it is funded by an FAA grant. So that's just, and if nothing else, the FAA project is bringing the airport up to where it needs to be. Yes and no. I mean, it is what it is. Not much you can do about it. In real terms, our convergence of when things will all probably come together is about 2026 anyway. So that's probably when we'll be looking at licensing, et cetera. It would have been great to keep going. The next step for us was about a 3-month, addition to the map. But we have about now a year and a half to work on the tech corridor. So if we miss out, I don't think so, because none of the people that signed LOIs were ready to move day after tomorrow. They were all about a 2-year out anyway.
And you still have them. They're still interested.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I'm hoping to get more. Dr. St. John, who you saw on the team thing, she attended Silicon Valley Space Week last month in October. And so we're starting to get out there and, throw some business cards around. She was there. There she is. She was there on behalf of the project. And meeting people, and since then we've had a Zoom call with a law firm that is specifically in the space sector that wants to partner with us and even be a sponsor of our upcoming workshop. So they see these people that are kind of over the horizon people, they still see this stuff takes time, and so they want to be part of what we're doing. So like I said, probably 2026 is a realistic timeline for what we're doing, and what we do between now and then is just keep telling the story. No one can say that we're in a big rush, because we're not. We just keep the parts of the economy we have going, and we just work forward. And, good thing is we'll have an up-to-date master plan for the airport too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I don't think I have any questions. Other commissioners asked the right questions, so I appreciate it. Thanks again for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to the consent calendar. Do we have any corrections or
I have a comment that says Planning Commission minutes. They're actually DRC minutes, not Planning Commission minutes.
That is correct. That is my mistake. I will fix that for all 3 of those.
All right, do we have a motion do we have any changes to them, or do we have a motion? Move approval.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Commissioner Kogler.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Conley.
Aye.
Commissioner Marlowe.
Aye.
Chairperson Christensen.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, moving on to other reports. Anything on the Paso Robles Streetscape Ad Hoc Committee report?
Nothing to report right now. We're still kind of working on finding a council date. There's been a lot of other issues at the council level. So my guess is that's going to be early next year. We'll probably have a good opportunity to present that, along with probably an update on what's going on with Railroad Street Streetscape at the same time. So there's stuff going on behind the scenes on both of them. We're just not ready to get to council on them.
Thank you. How about the housing constraints opportunities zoning code?
Yes, so we have a Housing Constraints Committee meeting this Thursday, which I think is the 16th, 3 p.m. in this room here. So agendas are out for that item right now. The 2 items on the agenda will be an update to the development impact fees. So that would be a review prior to going to council. And then we have some additional sections of the zoning code that need to be reviewed. So we're going to have the HCOC look at that before we bring that back to Planning Commission.
All right. And how about, do we have any DRC rotation schedule?
Yeah, the weekend after Thanksgiving, I'm going to be traveling on that Monday. So the 20th, I will be, or not the 20th, the 27th, I'll be traveling of November.
All right. So you're on for the 27th. Are you saying you need somebody to?
Yeah, if someone could cover, or
I could cover for you.
Okay.
Mr. Conley will cover the 27th.
That's 11/27.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I have a final comment or a question for these guys whenever we get to it.
Any other changes? Okay, Commissioner Kogler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a conflict on December 4th. I have November and December, but I have a conflict on the 4th. Anybody can pick that up, I'd gladly take something else.
Let me see here. I think I can do the 4th for you.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you.
I'll do the 4th. Yeah. This month. Okay, if that's all we have, we can approve those. I don't remember, do we need a motion on that? Thank you. Losing my mind tonight. Okay, so moving on, and now would be a good time for planning commissioner comments. Commissioner Marlowe.
Yeah, we were talking in the DRC on Monday. You had mentioned that they are going to the being remote is going to go away eventually. I just know from a standpoint of trying to make it to City Hall on 3:30 on Mondays is really challenging for myself. So I just wanted to I know that there's some confusion around it. Maybe it got extended or whatnot. So what's the plan with the DRC meetings?
Yeah, so that notice we read at the beginning of the meeting about AB 361, that was created during COVID to allow public bodies like planning commission, city council to attend meetings remotely. So that expires at the end of this year. So starting in 2024, there is no provision for public bodies to, attend meetings remotely. There's still a provision for emergencies. So it's my understanding, we'll get clarification from the city attorney that all the meetings, planning commission, council, as well as committee meetings like DRC, the committee members are going to have to be present in the meeting room. Now, we're still going to have the remote functions for applicants and the public available, but it's my understanding that the committee members will need to be in the room. Now, it's possible if a single committee member might have a conflict or trouble getting in, I think we could talk to the city attorney about what options are still available. So if that's going to be an issue, let's get together and we can talk about that.
Yeah. Just for the time being, after project's done, it should be fine. But
okay, and so let's talk about it because we can look at the schedule and maybe we can kind of just rearrange the schedule to work around, what your work issues are.
Okay, great, thank you.
Commissioner Conley.
The only comment I have is got a copy of a letter sent to Chairman Joel Neal from the Paso Robles Main Street Association saying that they were requesting that the planning commissioners and their families be a participant in the 62nd Annual Christmas Light Parade, December 2nd. And I didn't know how that would be facilitated if Commissioner Neal is going to take the lead on that. Apparently he has the application, and it would certainly probably be on our availability basis, but that's something we can, I guess, finesse 2 weeks from now. I think everybody got a copy of this letter. And so without Commissioner Neal here, I guess he has the application and we could talk about it 2 weeks from now. If those that want to participate, how we do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the unofficial liaison to Main Street, and Norma did corner me, and she's always looking for representation if we want to attend, but it's my understanding that we have to coordinate.
Yeah, they want an application.
Ourselves or an application, so I think it's Commissioner Neal's court. In the past, it's been different. We haven't done it in a while. My first year as a commissioner, I was invited to be in the trolley that went, so it changes. I think sometimes they have the city council and sometimes people. So this is kind of new.
I have the availability, but I don't know
I'm not sure I
the
do,
details of how it's going to happen.
Maybe we'll ask.
Yeah.
Commissioner.
I think maybe we'll have to reach out to him and clarify that. Maybe he can email out and
probably before 2 weeks too, because of the application.
I think we should only go if all the city staff can be in the parade with us.
I like it.
Now we're going to really be over budget.
Yes. It's probably not that important, but I thought I'd bring it up.
Okay,
So that's all.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Commissioner Davis.
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Kogler.
Yes, I just want to compliment all of you. And we had a delicate situation here, and I had some history. I was struggling with it, and I think you, as my colleagues, did really well.
Commissioner Kogler.
Along that line, I sincerely want to compliment you, Ty, on the way you handled that. That being a pro tem, you kind of sit back and you watch, but you did a really nice job handling that. Kudos to you.
Thank you. It was a tough issue, but I have to hand it, I think staff did a great job with their presentation because we needed so much detail. And I feel like there was so much history with it that I appreciate you guys going out of your way to make sure that all of the minor items were covered. And I really appreciated that legal was here and they were so attuned to it. I think that that was truly helpful. And I appreciated the way you guys all handled it. It was very, you could tell there was a little bit of energy and emotion in here. So appreciate that very much. Any other comments? Move to adjourn. Everybody in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. We had a staff comments. I apologize. We were going to cut you guys short. We're like, hey, you're done. Get out of here.
We got exciting news.
Man, sorry about that.
We thought this was the highlight of the night.
I got so excited.
Okay, just a couple of quick updates for you. So you'll recall that you recommended that Covelop industrial project for approval to the city council. That was a project over on Ardmore. We did receive a letter at Planning Commission of a potential legal challenge. We were hoping that that wasn't going to manifest into a formal CEQA challenge at council. Unfortunately, it did. So we did get a formal CEQA challenge at council. The council had to continue that item to December 5th. So it's going to get moved to the December 5th based on the legal challenge that was submitted. It's fairly extensive and sophisticated. It's quite likely that it won't be heard on the 5th either. So it's kind of a bad sign that we're getting outside challenges to projects. We have a couple other projects that we're trying to get through CEQA right now that are slowing down significantly based on now this new kind of risk assessment that we have to make about challenges to projects. So we haven't had to deal with that, in San Luis Obispo County. They've been dealing with these sorts of challenges in the big urban areas for a number of years, but it's come to our area now, and it is going to start to affect, projects, especially the timelines and the CEQA review process. So just be aware of that's going on in the background, and we'll hopefully have more information, and we'll let you know, what to expect next on, especially the Covelop project. We talked about HCOC this Thursday at 3. We're coming up toward the end of the calendar year, so that starts to kick into a lot of planning commission activities for the new year. So we have 2 planning commission seats that are going to basically expire in 2024. That is Commissioner Neal and Commissioner Covarrubias' seats. So they're both eligible to reapply. We're going to be advertising for applications starting basically 1st of January. The council will be interviewing planning commission applicants and making appointments on February 8th. The Planning Commission reorganization dinner will be Sunday, March 3rd. And then the Planning Commission Training Academy will be in Long Beach. That starts on April 6th, I believe. So get those things on your calendars. And I think Marcy sent out some feelers about interest in the Planning Commission Academy. I know because of COVID and whatnot, we kind of got out of the habit of going to those, but it's available to all the commissioners. So anybody that wants to go or thinks they might want to go, let Marcy know, and we'll make sure we save you a spot. And that'll conclude my report. Anything else, Darren?
No, nothing bad.
That's it.
All right, that's it. And I hope to see everybody at the tree lighting in the park on Friday the 24th, I believe. So I think it's going to be fun. Anyway, do we have a motion to adjourn? Anybody second? Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.